Hello, my name is Angelica Edwards, and I'd like to welcome you to the Bullied, Abused, Suicidal No More show. Today we have Devinda Kaur, and she'll be speaking to you about an amazing subject that everyone needs to know about. So I welcome Devinda.
Hi,
Hello.
yes, so I'm Devinda Kaur, and um, I want to talk to you about what happened to me. It was a long time ago, and so it's really the subject of like child marriage and forced marriage. And I don't know if you want me to go right into the story, or you want to ask me questions, or you just want me to tell you basically my story.
Yes, please tell us how it started. I mean, how did that happen to even begin with?
Okay, so I grew up in England. I have one brother and two sisters, and my brother is a year older than me. My two sisters, one is a year and a half younger, and the other one is about 6.5 years younger than me. And we grew up in Bradford, Northern England, in Yorkshire. As I was born there and raised there, and I've only been to India once. So, I'm really, just British, really, born and raised there. And so anyway, I, had a very strict upbringing. Like, we used to live above our shop wall. In the beginning, we had a house, but then when I was about 9, actually 10, I'm sorry, 9, yeah, 8 or 9, we moved further down the street to a shop, a grocery store, and then we used to live above the shop. And we used to have to help out whichever way we could. So we had to help our mum down in the shop, and then when we weren't working in the shop, we had to like do the housework above because my mum was busy and my dad was busy. Sometimes my dad wasn't around. So it was, my mum was like really busy, and we had to like help out in the shop. We had to help out with the housework and with the cooking and cleaning. And so I kind of like started my the cooking and cleaning part started around about 7, even before we had the shop, and then it just continued. And it was like all my spare time was just cooking and cleaning, and there's really nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, I think it was to some kind of extreme, that I wasn't really allowed any type of childhood. All I was doing was cooking, cleaning, helping out in the shop. At lunchtime, when I got to the age of like, let's say high school, used to walk home, and I would have to like make lunches and make tea for my mom, give it to her in the shop, give her a break so she could quickly like go to the bathroom, and then walk back to school. When I came home, it was the same thing, like make dinner because my mom was downstairs, feed everybody. She would come upstairs, my brother would go down in the shop, and then my mom would get a break, and I make dinner, then I would do the cleaning up afterwards. I would even have to make samosas at night time because there was a shop owner who used to like place orders for samosas, and I would do that. So I had very little time for homework, which actually we didn't get that much homework, but my whole life was just revolved around cooking, cleaning, and sometimes I used to go to bed 12 o'clock midnight when I had school the next day. So I was just like working all the time. And what I remember is like sometimes if we were sitting upstairs, and let's say we were watching TV and my mom came upstairs, she would get really mad like that. If there was a cup on the table, like, why is that cup there? How come you haven't taken it to the kitchen? Or if there'd be one cup in the sink that was not washed, we'd get into trouble about that. We'd get shouted at. If the dishes were all washed and let's say they were in the dish rack and we didn't put them away in the cupboard, she would get really annoyed. So we kind of like knew our place. We had to like be busy working. We felt guilty for sitting down watching the TV. We had to always be busy, always doing something, or we felt guilty, like she wasn't happy with us, that we had free time. And so that was like our life. It was basically just all like work, 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 ironing, washing clothes, had to iron everybody's clothes. And now to this day, I don't like ironing because like now I have the freedom. So I do my clothes like in the dry machine and I just hang them. But back then I had like no choice like that. I had to iron whether I wanted to or not. All the bed clothes, towels, even underwear, whatever. I had to iron everything. Everything had to be neatly folded and taken to everybody's rooms. So anyway, so we kind of like knew our place. We knew we couldn't answer back. We knew that what was expected of us, and if we ever did try to like speak our opinion, we were put in place. So anyway, one day when I was 14, a man came over and showed a picture of a boy to my mum, and my mum and him were like whispering and like looking over at me occasionally. And then after he left, my mum, she showed me a picture of the boy, and she says, so, you know, what do you think? You know, he's a really nice looking boy. He's very well educated. And I knew what she, you know, what she meant or what she wanted to happen, because actually it was happening to all my friends in Bradford too. They were all Punjabi girls, all from, you know, born and raised in England, but their parents were from Punjab, just like my parents. And so it was happening to all of us. We were all getting engaged at 14, 15. It was just happening to all of us. And we thought, it's our culture, it's our tradition. And we were told by our parents to stay quiet about things and not speak about family things outside. And so we really didn't speak to each other, but we kind of like knew that each other were getting married, that we got engaged, but we didn't really talk about things because we were all told to stay silent. So I think we got to like the point where we probably said, oh yeah, my mum's found a boy for me too. Yeah, my mum's found a boy. Just very small talk, but we didn't like really expand. We kind of all knew like the rules, and we didn't really even want to like probably go there. I don't know. It's just our upbringing. But we all shared a very similar upbringing. So anyway, when I was shown this picture, I had really no choice. I couldn't say no because of my upbringing. I would have been slapped across the face. Like my mum probably would have said to me, I just knew instinctively, she would have said to me, who do you think you are? Well, you know, what makes you so special? You know, your friend is getting married to the boy from India. You know, what's so different about you? So I knew I had to like say yes. And this was the first picture of a boy that was shown to my mum. She didn't show me 10 different pictures or anything like that, or introduce me to the boys. It was one picture and I had like no choice. So I basically had to like really say yes. I had no choice in the matter. And again, I was 14. And so anyway, within a few weeks or a few months, he came over to Bradford. So he came all the way from India, and I believe his brother was getting married. So he came for his brother's wedding. His brother lives in Birmingham. And so he was coming for that wedding also to meet me. And before I knew it, there was a meeting had been set up in my uncle's house, which was a couple of blocks away from where we live. And then I was told basically the rules. I was told I could only say hello to him, but I'm not supposed to really look at him afterwards, talk, just sit next to him, and we're going to take pictures and just follow the rules. And then his brother around my shoulder, you know, and we were posing for pictures. I had to smile. I was told to smile for the pictures. So he put his arm around my shoulders, his brother did, and they were all just posing like a happy family. And I had to smile for the camera. And like I said, I only said one word to him, hello, and then kind of like looked away, didn't look at him again, but just looked at the camera. And then I realized later on that that was my engagement party. I don't think it even registered to me at that time that that was my engagement, but that's basically what happened. That meeting with him and all those pictures was because I was engaged. It was already done. And I didn't know. I just thought, oh, he's here. And, you know, my parents are telling me like what to do. And it just didn't register. So anyway, basically that was how I was engaged. And then the following year, we went on a family holiday to the Punjab, India. This was my first time to India and the first time for my brother and sisters as well. And while everybody else, all our friends during the 6-week holiday from school, they all go to France and Germany and Greece, you know, like all these places close to England. And we're going to India, and we've never been to like anywhere like that. We actually had never been out of the country, but we would have preferred to go to France or Spain and not India. But we were taken to India. And in the beginning, we didn't like India at all because it was so different. Like we stayed in the Punjab with relatives, and there was like flies and, you know, just like no modern conveniences. But after a while, we began to like it. You know, we appreciated like not having anything. But basically, basically, one of the purposes I soon found out was for this trip to India, where we thought it was a holiday, was really to meet him, the boy that I was engaged to. And so since he's from India and he lives in India, he was only on a visit to England. We went over to his family's village. And before I knew it, I was posing for pictures again. And I realized that this was an engagement party, my second engagement party. And I was like the 15-year-old guest of honor. And again, maybe I didn't realize it at that time, but thinking back now, that's what I realized. But again, I was too young at that time. I didn't know what was happening. And so I met his family, his parents. There was a big party, posed for pictures. And also the other thing was my mum was there to buy clothes for my wedding and jewelry. And so obviously it was really a business trip, and it was a business of engagement and arranged marriage. It wasn't just a holiday. That's what I thought it was, but it was a business trip. And so, we kind of like just thought it's a holiday, but it wasn't. And then we were there in India for about 6 weeks total. We went back to England. We actually moved to Hull, which is about an hour away from Bradford. And again, we had another shop, a bigger shop, and we lived above the shop. And I had applied and been accepted into a college in Leeds, which was closer to Bradford, only about half an hour from Bradford, but maybe an hour and 15 minutes from Hull. And I went to the college in Leeds with my friend who I'd gone to school with, a Chinese girl. And we both got accepted into the college. But when I asked my mom, I said, Mom, I really want to go to this college. I've been accepted. I mean, she let me go for the interview. But when I was accepted, she says, no, you don't need to go to college. You're getting married. He's been waiting to marry you since you're 14. There's no point in you going to college. So I wasn't allowed to go to college. And like at that time, again, I didn't think too much about it. I was disappointed I couldn't go to college. But like now when I think back, and I think this is like so wrong. Like everybody goes to college, after school. How come I didn't go to college? But I wasn't allowed to. Marriage, like I said, was more important. So, the next year kind of like went by quickly. What happened was I applied to a government work training program where they teach you secretarial skills, and the government like gives you, so it's like they train you basically for skills. So I chose a secretarial college type of thing, secretarial school, they give you job placements, and they teach you how to like do shorthand and typing. And the government paid you like maybe £25 or something every week or every 2 weeks, I forgot. Very little money, but you got the training basically. And so I did that for a year. And as I was doing this course, like in England, you leave school earlier than you do here. And so I think I graduated at around about 15 and a half. And then by the time I did the secretarial school, I maybe started at 16. I finished by like, maybe I started at 16 and a half, finished at 17 and a half. And then towards the end of this training program, I realized the time was coming up, for this wedding, because I knew I was going to get married at 18. My mom didn't get me married as a child, but she got me engaged as a child at 14, which to me was very much like kind of like a child marriage because I was engaged. So it might as well have been a marriage basically, because now I couldn't really do anything else. I was tied to this person, this stranger, complete stranger who lived in India, and I only met once. And so as I was, finishing this course, and as I was getting closer to being 18, I realized I didn't want this marriage, and I couldn't speak to anyone about it. I couldn't speak to my friends about it. I couldn't talk to anybody. And now we'd moved away from Bradford. And so I was away from all my friends at school. And I couldn't speak to anybody from the secretarial placement thing, the job placement. I couldn't speak to them. There was like no one that I could speak to. I couldn't tell anybody in my family. And so I thought, I've got to get away. And so I was, I knew as soon as I turned 18, I was going to run away then, because I realized if I run away before I'm 18, I don't know, like, where am I going to go? I knew instinctively that it was going to be hard for me to run away before I was 18, and it would be easier afterwards because I'd be an adult. So that's what I did. Shortly after my birthday, I got a taxi, and that was extremely difficult for me too. I had packed my suitcase and hid it. I hid it like in my room. It could have been a big bag actually, maybe not a suitcase, and I hid it. And then basically on that day, I managed to get down the stairs, and I was like so scared that somebody would see me. And I snuck out of the shop, the back door, and the taxi was outside waiting for me because I had booked it in advance. And I took the taxi to the station, the bus station in Hull, and I had already bought like a bus ticket as well, one way to London, and I'd never been to London before, and I didn't know anybody in London. I'd never been there before. I didn't know where I was going to stay, so I just had this one-way bus ticket, got on the bus. My bag went on the bus as well, and I was like so scared that like by now they had realized I was gone and they might be following me, and I was going to be in really big trouble. So my heart was like racing the whole 5 hours on this trip to London. And anyway, so it was a 5 hour trip. I was so scared. I had some money saved up from the, from that job placement, the £25 per week or whatever, and I had that money saved up. Like I said, I didn't know where I was going to stay in London. I arrived in London, and I got out of the bus, and I got a taxi, and the taxi driver said, "Where are you going to?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, I just want like a cheap bed and breakfast. And so he took me to somewhere that he said that he had a perfect place for me in mind. And he took me somewhere, and it was near Warren Street, like one of the tube stations in central London. So I arrived at Victoria Coach Station and went to Warren Street, which is like central London. And I stayed in a bed and breakfast for several weeks till I found like a cheaper place in a house, just a room in a house. And I used to do odd jobs, restaurants and things like that, so all my money wouldn't go. Like my money was going, I was going for it really fast. And I remember I love London. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. And still to this day, I love it. Like part of my heart is still in London. I yearn to go back, and it's my favorite place. And I think the reason why I love it so much is because it's the first place where I had my happiness, my freedom. And so I think that's why I like it. I was enchanted by it. I was enchanted by just the beauty of London, like all the shops and the restaurants, and I've never experienced anything like that. And just freedom for the first time. And it was just like, it was great. And it was just really, really nice experience. So anyway, I was getting settled in, like I said. I love London, and I was doing what I wanted to do. And it was great to be able to like leave a dish, on the table and not get shouted at. So I was really enjoying all that. But meanwhile, I was like a little bit homesick as well. I did miss my family. I hadn't talked to them for about 2 months. So one day I picked up the phone and decided to call my family. And my mom, like she was really happy to hear from me, but she told me, she says that we really miss you. You need to come home. Your grandma's really ill. Your grandma, she's like, so I was led to think that my grandma was ill because of me. And I was really fond of my grandma, and it hurt me that my grandma wasn't well. So I thought, okay, I agreed that I would go home for a visit. And I just thought it would be a visit that I would be able to come back to London. So my mum made arrangements for my auntie to come and, to come and get me from London and go back with her. I mean, I could have gone on my own, but maybe they wanted to make sure I would go back. So my auntie came, and then, so she went on a train with me back to Hull. And before I knew it, it was like, gosh, all this pressure was put on me that, this boy's been waiting to marry you since you were 14. You can't do this to him. His brother and sister-in-law love you like a sister. How can you do this to them? He's been waiting, they're waiting, they love you. And I was like just drowning in all of it. Like I felt like such guilt and pressure that I was hurting my family, that they're counting on me, that I'm spoiling their family name. And, that they were feeling shame, and they felt like their honor was in question, that they gave their word to somebody and now they're like going back on it. And so I felt like all this pressure, and I just thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get away? But they were watching me like closely as well. And so there's really nothing I could do. So I started like thinking, maybe I just need to agree to it. I was 18, I was an adult, but it was still all this pressure. I just can't explain it to you. When you come from a culture like that and you have these expectations, there's really nothing you could do. Even when you're an adult, you can be forced into something because your family means a lot to you. And so when they're all pressuring you, and you want to do what's best and what's right, and you think that your parents have your best interests, then you don't want to hurt them. I already hurt them by running away to London and making them distraught. And I just was made to feel so much guilt for what I did and so much guilt for what I was about to do if I didn't get married to him. So I gave in. And at the back of my mind, I was thinking, I can't get away from all of these. They're all watching me, but maybe if I give in, I can get away from him. But I shouldn't have agreed. I should have stayed strong. Like I should have stayed in London and never called home. I made a huge mistake. But the thing is, now I was back home and I couldn't get away. And so I just thought, okay, it's easier to get away from one person than it is to get from them. And so that's my big mistake. I shouldn't have done that either, because I didn't know what I was getting involved in. I had like no idea that what was about to happen to me. I had like no idea really what marriage was. Like I read like romance stories and things like that, and I wanted that. I wanted like a romance. Like I used to read these books at nighttime, and I was caught up in this other world of like meeting somebody tall, dark, and handsome, and sweep me off my feet. But that didn't happen to me. I wasn't allowed to have those kinds of things, because here I am, born and raised in England and very much westernized, and I see things on TV and stuff like that, but I'm not allowed to have those same dreams. In fact, because of my culture, I'm drawn into like, you know, as though I'm from India, as though I mean, I am to some degree, but I'm very much British as well. I was born and raised there, but I feel like I was torn between two cultures. I'm westernized, but yet they're trying to draw me into traditions that really aren't mine. There's their traditions. Yes, I'm Indian, but I'm brought up in England, and now that's my way of life. But I feel like there's a clash of culture. You're drawn in one direction when you kind of like are used to like what's on the TV. You're used to pop music. You see all your friends, the way they're dressed, and you kind of like dress like that to some degree. Maybe not exactly like them because you're not allowed to, but you watch TV programs, soap operas and things like that, and you realize you can't have that. All of a sudden you realize you can't have that. You're not allowed. Your life has got to be very different, and you wonder why, but nobody explains it to you. You're not given the freedom. And so anyway, I thought I would escape from him, and I shouldn't have like fought like that, because like I said, I had no idea what marriage was. I mean, I should have known that people get married and stuff like that, but I didn't really think what it entailed, because like all these romance stories that I read, and I had a very sheltered life. Nobody explained to me really anything. And I read these romance stories where you fall in love and everything's nice and rosy and stuff. And I had like no idea like what was about to happen to me really. And so I gave in. And the man who showed the picture to my mom, he knew that this boy couldn't come back to England because immigration would be suspicious. So his daughter lived in Denmark, and he knew it was best for us to get married in Denmark, so that my future husband, when he was applying to come into Denmark, they wouldn't be suspicious there, because he could say that he just wants to see Denmark and he wants to see other places in Europe. But if he came to England, immigration would be suspicious that he was coming for an arranged marriage, because they were already very suspicious of a lot of people coming for that very purpose. But in Denmark, he'd have an easier chance. So this man was very smart, and he sent me to Denmark. So I was sent to Denmark. The boy came like about a week after me. We actually stayed in the same apartment in Denmark. You wouldn't believe it. I got there 1 week earlier. Are we still doing okay for time?
We're good.
Okay. So I got there about a week earlier than him. And then we actually stayed in the same apartment with this man's daughter, the man who arranged my wedding. His daughter lived there. And she had her husband and a small boy at that time. Maybe he was 8 years old. And it was like really very, very strange. So I was there a week before my future husband. And then when he arrived, what used to happen was like, if I had to go to the bathroom, she would go with me to the bathroom to make sure he's not anywhere there in the hallway, that he'd be in his room. And then when I would leave the bathroom, she'd take me back to the kitchen. And again, just like back home in England, I would help her in the kitchen with cooking and stuff like that and cleaning. And then my future husband would be like, let's say, sitting in the living room area or the dining table at times, and I would have to serve him and her husband with like chapatis and curries that I would help make in the kitchen with her. And I go to the table and he'd be sitting there, but again, no eye contact. Not that I even wanted to anyway. So I didn't even want this marriage. And so I would go put the food there, not look at him, and we didn't talk. and we were kept like separate, which was fine by me. But like I said, it was literally feet away, but we still didn't like really talk or anything like that, make eye contact. And we never like really like had any time alone, which was fine with me as well, because I didn't want to. And anyway, so we were in this apartment for about a week together, and 1 week I was there before him. And then so after about 2 weeks was like the date of the wedding, and then my family and a lot of people flew in from England, and that day was like one of the most miserable days of my life. I know it would sound like very strange, but it's not just me, but it happens to many girls that their wedding day is not the happiest day of their life. It's the most miserable day of their life because they're being forced into marriage, which is what I want to create this awareness about, that this has got to stop. You know, girls it can't continue anymore. You can't force them into marriage. It's horrible. It's evil. It's a human rights abuse. And so basically that was one of the worst days of my life. I was very miserable, but everybody around me was celebrating, and they didn't care. They didn't notice my misery, or they didn't care. They were all celebrating, dancing, laughing, you know, having food, whatever, but I wasn't happy, and I had to wear the clothes or whatever, and I blocked out lots of it. I can't even properly remember exactly if I know that I wore red because that's a customary color to wear for Indian weddings. I know I wore red, but I can't remember if it was a sari or if it was like, it's called a lenga, which is a skirt and a top, or if it was even a suit, which is like a long dress and baggy pants. I can't even remember which style it was because I just blocked that out. And so I can't remember those details because I didn't want to remember. It just got blocked out. And then wedding night too, I blocked out lots of it, but I do remember because that was the time I was like forced to be, you know, alone with him. And so I'm not really going to talk too much about that because it's not, you know, a memory that I really want to go back to. But so basically I was also sent on a sham honeymoon to Venice and Rome that, you know, my parents paid for. And Italy's supposed to be a beautiful country, and I love Italy. And I've been back since that time, at least another 5-6 times. So I won't let my experience put me off from Italy. I love Venice and I love Rome, but to be sent to two of the most beautiful places in the world under these circumstances, when you're married to a stranger that you don't love and you don't even know, and you're completely different to them, that wasn't a happy experience for me. So yes, so we were there for about a week. And then even during that time, I kind of knew I don't like him. He was controlling. He was completely different. He would try and tell me like what to do. You know, when we got back to Copenhagen, I kind of like told him I didn't want to be with him. You know, I wanted to like, we had a studio apartment, and I would tell him I wanted to like sleep on the sofa and he could sleep on the bed because it was just like one room. And he wasn't happy, but he kind of like agreed. He somehow agreed. And all I remember is I used to work in Burger King in Copenhagen, and he used to help out with the family that we had originally stayed with before we got the studio apartment. He used to help them out in their shop, and I used to work in Burger King. And he used to tell me stuff like, you know, when you're going to bus, don't talk to men, don't ask them the directions, make sure you ask a woman. So he'd tell me like what to do. And then all my life, like I hadn't worn jewelry or makeup or anything like that. And my mom said, when you get married, then you can wear makeup, then you can wear jewelry, then you can start looking like pretty and, you know, make yourself up and things like that. But the thing is, when I started to wear lipstick, because now I'm married, he used to say to me, you don't need to wear lipstick, or you don't have to wear eyeliner. Why are you bothering with makeup for? You're just going to work. He would tell me like what to do. I was like so confused. I was like thinking, gosh, like this, now I'm married and he won't let me do it. And he's telling me what to do and what not to do, to not talk to men, to not ask them for directions. I hated it. I hated being controlled. And the thing is, like, we didn't even have like anything in common. I didn't speak like fluent Punjabi because being brought up in England, I mean, I did speak Punjabi till I was 5. And then our teachers told us, you know, that we really have to like speak English, you we should just keep on speaking English and to tell our parents. And then we started to do that. And then it's like funny, even like to this day, sometimes, well, now my mom doesn't call me, but when she did, she would speak in Punjabi and I would answer back in English, because that's what we did even back in England growing up. Like she would speak in Punjabi sometimes, but we'd answer back in English because we got used to it from our teachers telling us. And so, yeah, my Punjabi wasn't perfect and he didn't speak any English. So we couldn't really even communicate properly. Like he didn't speak English, and so I had to like speak Punjabi, which I wasn't really comfortable with doing. I would only speak Punjabi with my grandma because she doesn't speak English. And now I'm being forced to speak to him in Punjabi and I didn't like it. And he couldn't speak English. So we had a communication barrier and we're completely different. He's very Indian, very, from a different country, and I'm very westernized and nothing in common. So they put me with a stranger that I have nothing in common with. And so anyway, yeah, I basically, like I said, I had told him I, didn't want anything to do with him. And behind my back, he called my family and told them that I didn't want to stay with him. So next thing I knew was my dad showed up in Copenhagen, and he was trying to talk me into working harder at the marriage. And I told him, I says, Dad, I don't want anything to do with him. I don't like him. And he just says, no, you have to try harder. And then because my dad, he liked drinking. So after he talked to me for a little bit, on his mind was just finding a bar. So he asked my husband, about bars there, and my husband went with him. They both went off, and after a few hours, my husband came back alone and drunk, and we lived on a top floor of this apartment building in Copenhagen, and it didn't have an elevator, and there was about 100 stairs. And so we lived down this hallway where I think there was maybe 2 other apartments on the same hallway as us. And then there's a door, and you would open the door and then you'd go down the 100 stairs. And so anyway, my husband came back, like I said, and he turned the music on really loud so nobody could hear anything. And he told me that I'd been really bad and that he was mad with me for not, giving him his rights as my husband, and that I was really bad, and that if he couldn't have me, no one else could either. And then he proceeded to strangle me. And then he also proceeded to have his way with me. And I knew instinctively that night that, I had to do my very best to save my life. I knew that he was really mad. He was drunk, and I knew he was really mad. And he was already like, his hands were on my neck, strangling me, and he was slapping me. And I knew I had to save myself. So I basically was crying and begging his forgiveness and telling him, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I've been a bad wife. I will change, please. I'm really, really sorry. I'm sorry I've done this to you. You didn't deserve it. And then he relaxed his hold on my neck, but he proceeded to make me give in. And so, to serve all his needs. And I was like, just shocked, really, really shocked. And after he was done, he told me that he would go get my dad. And so he left. But somehow my dad came back before he did. And I think he'd maybe gone to a shop or something to get some milk. So my dad came back, and I said to my dad, because he was the only person that was my family in Denmark, I said, Dad, you have to help me. I said, my husband just raped me and was going to kill me. He's strangling me. And you won't believe what my dad said. He said, he's your husband. He has every right to do that to you. And I couldn't believe it. My own dad didn't want to protect me. But they put me there with him. And now they said that he's my husband. He has every right, but they gave him that right. And I had nobody else in that country to help me. And I pleaded with my dad, and he didn't want to help me. So then anyway, my husband came back, and I asked them if they wanted some tea, and they did. And then the kitchen was opposite the studio apartment just across the hall. And so I knew this was my chance, that I would pretend that I was making tea for them and I'd make my escape. And they didn't suspect anything. They thought I was making tea. I grabbed my handbag. I knew that very night I had to get away. After my dad let me down like that, and after what happened to me, if my dad had helped me, maybe I wouldn't have gone. But he didn't help me. So then what am I going to do? I'm not going to stay there in that apartment with two people one who just did this to me, and the other one who's my dad and is not going to help me. So I grabbed my bag. I walked really, really softly, as quietly as I could, and I opened that door and I ran down those 100 steps. And for the second time in my life, I was running away. And the second time, as I took a taxi, I felt the same fear that I experienced before when I left Hull to go to London. And I was worried that my dad and my husband were following me. And I managed to get away. I got to a friend's house, and then I was able to stay with a friend. And I remember that I talked to some of my colleagues at Burger King and told them that I needed to go back to my apartment to collect my belongings. And they were really, really nice to me. All I remember is that I felt my own family couldn't even help me, but these people at Burger King, a lot of them are from Britain, actually working there in Denmark. And I feel like they had more of a sense of like family, that, we're all from England or we're all from like the UK. We have to help each other. And when they heard like my story, they wanted to go and protect me, wanted to go to my apartment in case he was there and did something to me. So two of them escorted me to my apartment. And then when we got upstairs to get my belongings, the whole apartment was destroyed. My husband had taken, like, I don't know what he took, but he had damaged the walls. He ripped them either with a knife or a screwdriver or something, so I wouldn't get my deposit back from the landlord. He was so vindictive. And he took my jewelry. He took my, like, all the clothes that my mum had bought me, because, when you get married as an Indian, you get all these brand new clothes and jewelry and everything. So everything she bought me, he took everything. He took my certificates that I got from school, from high school, my O-levels, things that had meaning to me. He just took everything. He left some things there, but all the things that were valuable, he took, including my certificates, which were valuable to me and not to him. And so, yeah, I managed to collect whatever I could and left again. And I filed for divorce from him. And the divorce took a little while to come through, but I never saw him again. I had also filed a police report of like what he did as well. And then I stayed in Denmark for about a year. And every time I tried to call my family, they tried to like make me go back to him, trying to tell me that it was my fault, I was in the wrong. And when I said, no, I'm not going back to him, my mom used to just hang up the phone. And then after a while, when she realized I wasn't going to go back to him, I would call and she would just hang up. She didn't even want to talk to me. So they kind of like disowned me. So for almost 2 years, I didn't talk to my family at all. I stayed in Denmark. Then I went to Australia, where I'd always wanted to go. And I spent a year in Australia. And I remember one time, I don't know, like, if my mum managed to get a letter to me or something, but I called home and she said, we'll forget everything. Just come home. And by that time, I'd already been in Australia for a year. So I was kind of like ready to go back. And I went back. And things are like never the same again. But basically, that's really my story, is that that this shouldn't happen to anybody. Nobody should be forced into marriage. You can be forced into marriage as an adult at 18, 21, 26. This can happen when you come from a culture like mine. If you're Indian, Saudi Arabian, from Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Afghanistan, it happens where girls can't say no to their family. They're expected to follow custom, tradition, and culture. And you can't say no to your family, and this family honor and shame, and that pull, that feeling of guilt and everything, the burden, the pressure that your family put on you, older can be forced into marriage, and it's really wrong. Forced marriage needs to be criminalized, and in the UK now it's criminalized, but here in America it hasn't been. And so I really want it to be criminalized here, because also the other thing too is that girls under the age of 18, and boys for that matter too, are being forced into child marriage too. which is completely wrong. Both are wrong. Nobody should be forced into marriage, whether you're under the age of 18 or past the age of 18. But especially, can you imagine a child? There's girls around this world who are 6, 10, 14. They've been made to marry older men. Like sometimes there's a 10-year-old girl married to a 44-year-old man. And I don't know how parents are doing this to their kids, but they're doing it all around the world. And what is like really, really horrible to know is not only is it happening in third world countries, but it's happening here. So for instance, like my forced marriage, like you think that would only happen in India, in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, it happened in the UK. So obviously no place is immune to it. If it happens in the UK, it's happening here in the US. And I've been following these stories so closely. And I know every day I come across these stories, it's happening definitely here. And not only is that happening, but child marriage is happening here too, where girls any age, 12, 14, 15, 16, are getting married. And the thing is, when a parent consents on papers that go to the court and a judge sees the parent's consent, the judge will think, well, the parents know the best for the child. If they've signed, I'm fine too. And so it's allowed. A 16-year-old here, maybe even like 12-year-olds, but it probably doesn't happen as commonly at 12. But there's states here, such as like in Massachusetts, kids can get married from the age of 12. There's no like minimum age. And in other states, it's like maybe 16. And there's only 2 states where recently the marriage age was raised to 18, and that's New Jersey and Delaware. But just thinking that some of them even allow 16, 17. And then there's some like Massachusetts where there's no like minimum age. You can get married at 12. And believe me, it has happened where people will come from another country and get married to a girl because they know that we don't have strong enough laws. And so they're allowed to participate in child abuse, and it's allowed and it's legal. So, you know, laws have to be changed. They have to be strengthened. Maybe what worked a long time ago, or, you know, people thinking that it's their rights to marry when they want to, you know, that a 16-year-old should be able to marry or a 17-year-old should be married. We have to also protect those other people who don't have any rights. There's so many people who are being forced into marriage that until we can raise the age, we can't protect those who aren't able to be protected, those who have no voice. We have to be able to protect everybody by making the law the right law for everybody. And so that's really what I want to say, is that I'm trying to work to raise the marriage age in California. I mean, obviously I would like for it to be raised to 18 everywhere. And to let you know the truth, I mean, to me, I was married at 18 and I was way too young. I think it should be raised to 21, but there's so many right now, they're all fighting to like have it raised to 18. So I'm willing to concede to that. It's better than kids being married at 16 or 17. Nobody needs to be married at 16 or 17. Even if there was a couple and let's say they believe that they're in love, I don't believe they need to be married at 16 or 17. They're still too young to know their mind. If you can't buy a packet of cigarettes at 16 or 17 and you have to wait till you're 21, you can't buy a drink and you have to wait till you're 21, you have to wait till 18 till you can vote. You can surely wait till 18 till you get married. That's a significant contract that you enter into. And if you can't even divorce till you're 18, but yet your parents force you into a marriage at 16, just imagine this. If you're into that marriage, there's no way you can leave or get out of it till you're 18 because you're a minor. So why would they let minors get married then and enter a contract like that? So it's all completely wrong. And so it has to be changed. So I'm asking for, you know, the marriage age to be raised to 18, and I'm asking also for forced marriage to be criminalized. And I started a petition on change.org, and that's what I'm asking. I'm really hoping that people will sign and spread awareness about my petition because I need more signatures. And I did have a meeting recently with a legislator's staff member, so I'm really happy about that, and I'm hoping that he's going to introduce some legislation, so we're working on that. And I want to share my petition. So I don't know if you can see this, but so on here, there's a link to my petition. So if you go to www.change.org/end child marriage and end forced marriage. You can visit that page on change.org, and you'll see a red button at the bottom which will say sign now. And if you can please sign, I would really appreciate it, because I need more people to get behind this cause. Because like I said, this shouldn't be happening to anybody. It's a human rights abuse. It's a form of human trafficking, and we all have to end it. We all have to be proud of it. And today I'm being a voice for those that have no voice. And for a long period of time, I had no voice. I was made to stay quiet, but now I'm speaking up about it. And I've realized I've got to stop being quiet. I've got to break the silence, and I've got to stop the circle of abuse, basically. So thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Devinder. You are amazing. I thank you for your strength, and I'm so sorry for your struggle. I've known you for so long, and I never knew that you had this horrible marriage situation that you were put through. You're amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this story with us, Devinder. And we do want to stop the underage marriage. I was one of the very first to sign that petition because I agree with you.
Thank you so much, Angie. I really appreciate it. You know, every signature, it means a lot to me. So for you signing, I really, really do appreciate that. It means so much. Thank you.
We'll do our best to get the word out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon, Devinder. Take care.
All right, take care, Angie. All right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.